Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Okay, this is thanks to the ignorant, uninformed, absolute liberal voters here in Oregon. 114 hearing tomorrow to put an injunction in against this ballot measure that's basically give up our constitutional rights of the Second Amendment, but nobody really gives a shit, I guess. But yeah, it's a hearing tomorrow. It's in Portland. It's by a Portland judge. So my prediction is that the judge will not throw in the injunction, and it'll have to be appealed. And then in the meantime, after next Friday, you won't be able to buy a gun in Oregon. Thank you, liberals. Just another reason to leave this total crap hole liberal state. Anyway, peace out, guys.
So in just 1 week, Oregon's voter-approved Measure 114 is set to take effect. Now, there's a chance that Measure 114 does not take effect next Thursday. That's up to a judge to decide during a hearing tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So more on that in a minute. But in case you haven't been paying attention, Measure 114 is a really strict form of gun control that will vastly change the way that guns are bought and sold in Oregon. Since it narrowly passed in this election, several lawsuits have been filed, including another one just today by the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Here's a recap of what would change if the law does take effect. Any people who want to buy a gun will have to get a permit first. Those will be issued by local law enforcement, but the process to do that is still unclear, and state police, they will put that together. So the steps to getting a permit include completing a gun safety class that meets certain requirements and then submitting to a federal criminal background check, which does include getting your fingerprints taken. Those permits could cost up to $65 and would be good for 5 years. If you are denied a permit, there is an appeal process, but if you're approved for a permit, there is no limit on the number of guns you can buy. These permits would not be required to own a gun, only to purchase one, meaning current legal gun owners do not need a permit unless they want to buy another gun. Okay, Measure 114 also bans the sale, transfer, and manufacture of ammunition magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. With the exception of people being those who already own these magazines, they can keep them and use them in specific locations, like your private property or shooting ranges. New high-capacity magazines just cannot be made or sold. Now let's talk more about tomorrow's hearing. It stems from the first lawsuit filed against 114, which wants the measure tossed out because plaintiffs argue that it violates their Second Amendment and due process rights. Tomorrow's hearing is for a judge to decide on whether to place an injunction or pause to put the measure on hold until a ruling can be made on the constitutionality of the measure. We'll be watching closely tomorrow at 10 a.m. to see what that judge decides to do. But ahead of that hearing, Oregon's Attorney General filed a 42-page response urging the judge to allow the measure to become law next week, saying that any pause to the measure would lead to, quote, unnecessary deaths. Plaintiffs have targeted the high-capacity magazine section of the measure, arguing that without them, law-abiding gun owners will be at a disadvantage when confronting criminals. The AG contends that magazines hold more than 10 rounds that hold more than 10 rounds are not arms protected by the Second Amendment, and that current gun owners involved in the lawsuit will not be harmed if the measure becomes law. Writing, plaintiffs can continue to keep and bear the arms they currently possess, which is enough to protect their Second Amendment rights for the pendency of this litigation. The Attorney General's office also disagrees that Measure 114 violates the due process rights of the plaintiffs, saying that people who already own high-capacity magazines can keep them and use them in certain instances. They're not being taken away. Quote, the law does not punish past purchases, only future conduct. Legislation readjusting rights and burdens of such ownership is not unlawful solely because it upsets otherwise settled expectations. Now, when the Attorney General's office, what they did not talk about, though, in this filing is what's being done by state police or local law enforcement to actually get that permit process up and running in just a matter of days. In fact, even today, the Eugene Police Department came out and flatly said it will not have the permitting process in place by next Thursday, but says it is working with state police, the Association of Chiefs of Police, and the state's Sheriff's Association to implement a permit system as soon as possible. In that same statement, the police department pointed to numerous questions about Measure 114 that still need answering from the state and the courts. Answers that have to be found in just 7 days, unless the judge puts the measure on hold during tomorrow's hearing. So stay tuned on for that.
Have you noticed that as everything around you seems to decline, one thing still grows? It is the power of your rulers. None of their plans and directives have solved your problems or made your life better. The only result has been their increased control over you at the cost of your freedom. Do you know why? You gave them the power.